good evening. This is the third time I've recorded this. This one I've re-recorded because I found some not new information, but old information that I should have researched beforehand. So I'll jump into that when I get there. So I'm recording this partly to celebrate having an article approved on Wikipedia, which really, it didn't used to be like that. You could just post any old crap and an editor will just delete it. But now you actually need to have your first article reviewed to make sure it actually fits on Wikipedia. So you can't just put any old rubbish on, which suits me fine. So I feel like this really is, I feel very affirmed that my tendency to be skeptical and check facts and find out whether or not a source is reliable has really paid off. It's a minor victory, but anyone who knows me would agree that I am a fact checker to the point of being extremely irritating. And then, so these days I've learned to switch off when it really matters, such as when I overhear my colleagues talking about astrology or crystals. So I just tend to say something like, or either I try and be very busy and very absorbed in something else. But if they ask me things about astrology, I just say, oh, I don't really know. I don't know what my star sign is, and just leave it at that, because I feel like, you know, if Scorpio is in Uranus, that's great. I'm happy for you. So, but this original skepticism actually originated from my childhood, because I was very scared of various Fortean entities such as aliens, ghosts, and the Mothman, which used to keep me awake at night. And I had the Usborne Book of Ghosts, which I will get. This thing used to freak me out at night. I used to wake up at night and worry about finding a ghostly priest at the end of my bed. This one in particular, it's just a double exposure thing, but this used to absolutely freak me the hell out. I don't know why. But when I realised that this stuff wasn't real, as it were, it actually made me quite angry. And that rage kind of fueled me. Like, I felt like, oh, I've just wasted all this time worrying that the Mothman was going to attack me in my sleep, and I could have been doing something else instead. So this is where it comes from. So around the early 2000s, I started to get involved with the James Randi Foundation and the original kind of atheist skeptic movement. And that's before it became weird and became populated by creepy men. First of all, creepy men with fedoras, and more recently, creepy men who look like toes and have podcasts. So I drifted away from it around the time it all kind of seemed to disintegrate, but I did feel that I learned all I really could from them anyway. And I then did an Open University diploma in combined science, which is the equivalent of the science A-levels that I didn't do, and I kind of regretted not doing those. And I felt that I needed to have that to have this modicum of credibility if I'm debunking something and saying, oh, well, you know, atoms don't really work like that. That's not really how biology works. And if someone said, oh, what do you know? I go, well, you know, I did do an OU summer school at Sussex University in 2008. So back at the time, something particularly stupid was drawn to my attention, and I was all over it. And it was an opinion piece written in a local free paper by a local, I'm going to call him a cleric, about how carbon dating was unreliable. And he gave this example, which was rock paintings found in Cape Town in 1991 were carbon dated to 1,200 years old and were put on display in a museum in South Africa, but were later shown to be contemporary paintings by a local woman called Joan Arends. The lab that did the carbon dating was reported to be connected to the University of Oxford. So I read that, and no further explanation was given, and there wasn't much to go on. Still, I had a name, and I was aware that this particular local character liked to rehash his op-eds from Answers in Genesis, and he still does, and Answers in Genesis is still going. And it has not changed a bit over time. So, you know, why would it change? Why would it want to change? You know, so this, I'd found out some more information from Answers in Genesis, and then I started to wonder. Well, I had a name, I had a location, I had a lab, I had a date. So what happened next was I wrote about this in the blog I had at the time, and that blog has long since been deactivated, and I will get on to why I think that's an issue a bit later on. But I had to use the Wayback Machine, and I reminded myself what I did next. I phoned the lab. I was irritated at the lack of any independent source for the story, which is apparently what counts as an argument for young Earth creationists. So I phoned the ORAU, which was then the Oxford Radiocarbon Accelerator Unit, which was the radiocarbon lab that was based in Oxford. And I spoke to the extremely helpful Dr. Tom Hyam, who later became the unit's director. And I'll drop in a picture of what he's doing now. He's now a professor and is very successful. And so he checked through all 100 odd South African tests for me for 1991, which was just after the lab had been opened. And he found the sample. He found that the painted rocks were found on Pietermaritzburg golf course, which is in Natal, which is a considerable distance from Cape Town, which was the original claimed location. Now, I really think that the location got mixed up because South Africa is a big place. Natal is very far away from Cape Town. But if you ask the average young Earth creationist, flat earther, where is Natal, they're not going to know, but they probably are going to know where Cape Town is, or maybe hazard a guess, they've heard of it. So I think that's why the location changed. So he said there is a valid and interesting explanation for the results, which was obviously ignored because their explanation is all they need. He said the paint contained carbon from a petrochemical source, which was the age that the results said, but this obviously affected the overall results. So there was a petrochemical source which was 1,200 years old. But he said that he had no record of anyone called Joan Arends, but he did confirm from the records that the paintings had later been identified as contemporary and not the work of 9th century Bushmen. Now, it's clear that the lab and museum which commissioned the tests should have looked more carefully at the paintings before putting them on display as authentic. But this is a criticism of their methods, their archaeology, not the dating technique. And raw data in any context is rarely useful. And I guess creationists don't know very much about carbon dating and radioactive decay. Though Dr. Hyam observed that a few examples have been picked out from the many thousands of tests run each year, and these have then been willfully misunderstood. Incidentally, the creationists have this both ways. So not only is carbon dating unreliable, but even if it is accurate, the results are dismissed with the comments that things were different 6,000 years ago. So radioactive decay was apparently different, refraction of light was different, dinosaurs were different. And what's interesting is when you have a case, because I then had a further look around more recently to find out if there's anybody else went to the trouble of contacting the lab and tracking down the results. And it seemed that nobody had. So I'm going to drop in some screenshots of forum posts and fascinatingly a screenshot from a journal about the Turin Shroud, wherein, of course, they have a very, very, very vested interest in making sure that, unlike a young Earth creationist perhaps, that their carbon dating results need to be older than the carbon dating is showing, because the Turin Shroud is a medieval forgery. Everyone knows this. The carbon dating shows this. But obviously, if you believe that it really is the Shroud of Jesus Christ, then you would like your carbon dating to be way older than that. So that is quite funny to me. So what I then looked at was there's another forum post with someone saying, well, there's no way to check this. There's no way to know if this is true. And I've literally, like 10 minutes ago, had a look at this forum post from 2004 and thought, yes, there was a way of checking. And I did it, and I feel this is so like, I feel like, oh, I wish I'd just Googled this in 2004 and posted on this forum and gone, well, actually. Anyway, but this is the point really, that all this stuff I did, I felt like it doesn't matter. So the original blog that I did detailing the phone call and this research and how helpful Dr. Hyam was, It's been deactivated. It's only available on the Wayback Machine, and this lie continues to be perpetuated. It's on creationist forums. It pops up on social media, on Facebook sometimes, and you can just look for yourself. Just Google it. So I was also reminded that this was around the time that intelligent design was becoming quite popular, and I do remember having these tedious circular discussions with people online about it. And it's hard to imagine now, but there was a time when being proved right was actually quite satisfying and worthwhile. So back when the wedge strategy was revealed, we were able to pull the masks off the intelligent design brigade with their speciation nonsense and discover it was young earth creationists all along, which is a revelation that was not a surprise to anyone with half an ounce of scientific literacy. Incidentally, if you wish to Google this Joan Arendt's carbon dating and you get to the forum posts, I've done a screenshot of a couple of them. I will warn you that there are people on there who are very into their speciation as far as it applies to humans, and a great deal of scientific racism. So just be warned, if you wish to go and Google that, that is what you're going to see. So, but with the intelligent design brigade, they kind of seem to fade away. There are a few legal judgments in the United States, and they just seem to disappear. And to explain what wedge strategy is, the idea was that if they get what they called intelligent design into American schools, which they did briefly get a couple of mentions in textbooks, they had their own terrible textbook, which was called Of Pandas and People. And they did have that in schools briefly. It was not very good. But their idea was that they would get a little bit, like a little wedge in, and that would gradually open the door to more religious content, more Bible-based teaching. But I think that ultimately worked. They're just very, very recently, Texas schools now have to have the 10 Commandments on the wall of every classroom. I don't. It worked. Now, it made me think, actually, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of antifragility. It was put forward by Nicholas Taleb. And his idea was that there's antifragility, there's fragility, and things that are robust. So something that's anti-fragile is something that becomes stronger after it has been injured. So there are fragile things that get destroyed or irreparably damaged. Robust things can weather insults and remain undamaged, but an anti-fragile thing becomes stronger as a result of being damaged or injured. And this isn't necessarily a positive. I do see some, basically the guys who look like thumbs with their podcast go, oh, you need to be anti-fragile, and they do not understand what that means. What they mean is robust. Because bad things can be anti-fragile. For example, cancers are anti-fragile because a cancer can evolve and change in response to treatments, and that's what makes cancers so terrifying. They are really anti-fragile. That you will the way that they can change and develop, that's anti-fragility, and it gets stronger, which is so it's not necessarily a positive thing. So I actually think that this is the case with the modern populist conservative movement. If you hear a noise, it is my cat. You will hear a noise. She is playing with a ball. So the modern populist conservative movement evolved and changed their strategies in response to debunking, fact-checking, and just science in general. And over the ensuing decades, they've learned the best way to deal with debunking is just lie. They'll say it's conspiracy, an entity. Well, they don't specify the entity normally, although they've started to, but you could probably guess. And this entity has manipulated the evidence. And in fact, any attempt to fact check or present a more plausible explanation marks you out as part of the conspiracy, and is used to check their position, strengthen their position rather. Yes, you're going to just have to live with that. So, my phone call to the lab, well, Dr. Hyam is in the pay of big carbon dating. Evidence of human-induced climate change dating back well over 100 years. Well, that's altered. It's been misinterpreted. It's just fake. And currently, it seems like every crank idea I thought had been thoroughly killed before 2005 is now getting its day in the sun, with wide, wholehearted support from various populist governments. And these governments are also funding phenomenally talented lawyers who are able to take minor points of constitutional law in the US and then twist them into powerful tools to create their dream of conservative Christian regime. And it's taken nearly 30 years, but the movement has taken the attacks on board and has metastasized into something massive and malign. But what do I mean when I say that it doesn't matter? It doesn't matter if I fact check, if I debunk. Well, no, on a small scale, yes, it is worth debunking things just to reassure yourself you're not going mad. This stuff is still not true. And then what I'd also like to say is, in terms of AI now, is there are so many gaps in AI's knowledge. There are so many things like my blog, like my phone conversation, and I wrote it up, put it on the blog. It's not there anymore. It's not there for LLMs to scrape off the internet. That is lost knowledge, lost media. That's partly why I did this video. So I am going to put in a screenshot of a chat I had with ChatGPT, and I presented ChatGPT with this particular case, with these paintings and the discrepancies with the carbon dating results and the actual provenance of the painting. And as ChatGPT explained this, and it did, and the result was, well, you'll see. It's a plausible explanation. And I said, no, this is what happened, and I know this is what happened because I did this, and this is the information I got. And it went, oh, okay, well, in the way it does, very ingratiating. Oh, yes, you're so clever. Well done, you, for doing all that. I will take this on board for next time. So I would just like to highlight, to close this off, that when people ask AI a question, it can only ever source the reply to the information from stuff that's on the internet, from the data that it has been fed or it has crawled around and found. And there is so much out there that has been lost due to, link rot. People stop maintaining blogs, they just get deactivated. And a lot of this information is just disappearing, and so the original lie is still there, and my debunking is not. And just a warning, I still do not feel that ChatGPT or any other LLM is trustworthy enough to rely on. Everything I ever find out from these things, I will always independently check, and you should do that too. So that is all for me. I hope that it was audible. Come here. I am going to finish this by showing you a cat. Come on then. I will show you a cat. Good on. Move it. See? Say hello to the people. No? All right. So there you go. Bonus kitten content. Okay. So I hope you have a nice evening. The previous video was better, but I was down in the corner because my daughter set up the camera wrong. But my hair looked really great because I just blow dried it, and I never normally do that. So, but you've lost that now. Anyway, I hope you have a nice evening. I do notice that people have been subscribing, which is really cool. Maybe I get 3 figures before the end of next year. Who knows? Probably not. You're so chaotic. Come here. Oh, come here. Oh, no, pretzel. It's a pretzel. And this is the other one. This is pretzel. I don't usually hold them like this. Okay, you're going off now. All right, off you go. It's a dog. Yeah, adopt